Axons Unleashed.
As ADF members and veterans, we see the world differently. In a world that tolerates and accepts subpar performance, understandably, we demand more. With over 100 years of military service across all three services inside the wire at Axon, this podcast will give you access to Australia's most successful veterans and thought leaders in the elite performance and property space. Join myself, Tamara, Dan and Dane as we uncover the untold truths of what it really takes to successfully transition from the ADF, how to build a multi-million-dollar property portfolio, how to start a business as a veteran entrepreneur, and how to communicate more effectively with your partner, whilst optimising the personal performance of every aspect of your life. As a veteran that served personally over 24 years in the military, I'm Robbie Turner. I'm the CEO and founder of Axon Property Group. Welcome to Axons Unleashed. Hey, welcome everyone. My name's Robbie and I'm joined here with Dan and Tamara. Welcome to episode 5 of Axon Unleashed, your podcast coming your way. How are you, mate?
Yeah, going absolutely great. I mean, we've so far been following on like a bit of a chronological order from like the very, very beginning of Axon as it is. And now I'm really excited about the next episodes because it's like kind of where most people have become where they know and love Axon from where we are now. So
yep, the new Axon, well, the grown-up Axon, I guess.
That's actually going to be the topic of today, is that when the training wheels finally came off, so yeah, when Axon sort of grew up. Let's just do a quick little recap, because I've no doubt we've got a few listeners right now, and even those watching on YouTube, that are just come across this for the first time, but we're now going into episode 5, and there's so many nuggets of gold and bits of inspiration and a little bit of blood on the floor, and then lots of apologies from me about how I almost had the business shut down many times.
Did you hear an apology?
Due to my stupidity, I fucking said sorry. By the way, this is a MA 15 plus podcast. By the way,
it is literally the only apology that I think Robbie has been able to give out that's been caught on camera.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So episode 1 was just all about, it was actually called The Tinder Story, how Axon started because of Tinder. So it was like the very, very sort of start of Tamara and I.
And that was not Tinder for you and I.
Correct. For the record, that's not us. But yeah, so go back and, you'll see, I guess one of the little catchphrases that one of our clients said, if it wasn't for Tinder, imagine how many Defence Force personnel would not have been helped be able to sort of buy a property and create wealth for their life. So yeah, that's an interesting little story in itself. Then we sort of moved into Dan, you come and join the business about 6 months afterwards, and certainly there was a catastrophic event and catastrophic injury that I suffered pretty much simultaneously around that time. So that was and that's an interesting little topic
dare I
as
say,
well.
a life-changing injury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Then the next one was all about I sacked my wife from the business, so that had some ramifications. So especially for you ladies that
and then begged me back.
That's true. Back into the business, by the way. So we didn't lose the business or the wife or the relationship, which is very critical. And then the last episode was all about why we stopped marketing to 99% of Australia. Where we basically went, right, let's get crystal clear on who is the perfect avatar, who are the main people we want to speak to, and basically, yeah, you've got to learn more about how that we went into narrow and deep on that topic, which is really cool. Yeah, there you go, episode 5.
It's been a good little trip down memory lane, I think. Hey, Tam.
Yeah, it has. And we also touched on the last episode just about we had just kind of started with some of our own coaching and mentoring, and just how important that it is for us as business owners, because when we started, we did not know anything about business. That's a lie. We knew a little bit, but you don't know what you don't know. And that's kind of the same with our clients as well. They can do as much research as they can and jump on realestate.com or whatever it is, but they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, so that's an element of business coaching is absolutely fundamental. So even if, to sort of reflect on myself, when I got out of the military in 2013, I sort of got out as a 5th year Special Forces major. I was basically running the whole counter-terrorism and collective training campaign for Australia's Special Forces to react to a catastrophic event. So, it was a pretty high-flying position down in Canberra. And then I went and joined the other business. I was like, I'm ringing up people. Hey, do you know the address for the seminar? Have you got any dietary requirements? I'm moving bloody chairs around the place, putting little, pamphlets on the desk. I'm like, well, lucky I started my time as a digger. And that element of humility sort of came my way very quickly. But even when I went up to the ranks and got to sales consultant, sales manager, and then eventually general manager, that's when I really started to get some exposure about how a private business gets run. As Tammy said, and the reason why I went off on that little rant there to give you some context, you don't really know how a business is run until you've got your own balls on the line and you've got your own sort of KPIs to meet and your own money is being injected into making it all work.
Absolutely, because remember, even in the beginning, you're like, I'll just do an ad on Facebook and people will show up to my webinar. And starting from scratch, we were getting 6-7 people turn up. Like
you're being very generous there. There was not 6 or 7. There was probably 3.
Yeah.
So you know what? Inflated figures, 100% on top. Nothing.
Well,
wrong
a
with
couple
that.
of them were like friends and family and stuff. So yeah.
So yeah, the whole thing about coaching was very, very critical. So we touched on it a little bit last time about how we found our perfect avatar. So Tamara and I decided to join the Entourage group down in Sydney, run by a really good friend of ours now, Jack Delosa. Shout out to you again, buddy. Thanks for everything so far. So I guess, Dan, you and I have been coaching clients now for many years, and the importance of not just doing your own research and actually getting educated and coached and guided and mentored and just have that peace of mind. Like literally this morning, you were telling us about a story last night when you spoke to a lovely couple that went, got all this stuff going on, we've got to be pregnant soon, we're going to get posted, we've got to this, the property stuff. What did you say to him? You said, why don't I just take all that off your hands? You go keep doing you, and me as your property coach and an expert team, we're just going to go and take care of all that stuff for you. Just the reactions from it, phenomenal.
Oh, yeah, and it's just, you're taking a load off people's shoulders to let them know that, someone's got your back, someone's going to guide you through this and show you the pathway, not need you to go and do all the research on the background, then try and figure out the right way to go and then be second guessing yourself the entire way through the journey. It's an absolute game changer from that perspective.
So one of the books, and we spoke in the previous episode about how it is that Tamara and I could get to work with each other, called Rocket Fuel, the integrator and the visionary. But there was another book by Gino Wickman called Traction. So for all the sort of entrepreneur types out there, I guess one of the topics that we do want to continue to cover off on Axons Unleashed is, if you're a defence member thinking about getting out, you want to start your own business and become a veteran entrepreneur, there's so much about business, sales, marketing, positioning, people, finance, HR, all that stuff. So we come across this book called Traction. And, doing a whole lot of stuff is like just spinning wheels in the mud, but actually knowing what you're doing and having the right person in the right seat and having business and systems and planning models in place really does start to sort of not just spin your wheels, but give you that traction. So that was a really, really important part of how we grew up. And then there's this one element to it called the VTO, or the Vision Traction Organizer.
Absolutely. The planning side of things is so important for any part of your life. Like if you don't plan, then where are you going? Setting those goals, setting those targets, and that's been a key element to how we've grown so fast.
Yeah. And Tammy, you you just mentioned it, and then Tammy, you sort of followed on. It's about growing up, I suppose. And for me, when I think about Axon, there was 4 real key events that saw Axon sort of grow up, and I think we should explore these today.
Go for it.
First one was probably the implementation of that planning cycle that you started to allude to there, so I want to deep dive into that. Mm-hmm. The new operating premises, that was a very big day in the life of Axon. The business then running independently of you guys, so with the business owners and founders removed from the organisation, how did the business continue to operate there? And then the last thing I think from our real growing up stage was a really, really memorable end of year trip or planning trip. Depends on who you speak to about what the purposes of that journey was actually on. So there was those really big 4 events, and I suppose from that perspective, that sort of happened over maybe around about a 12-month period where things really started to get a bit crazy and the training wheels started to come off, right?
Definitely.
Absolutely, yeah.
I felt like we were sort of going through adolescence and puberty and finishing high school and putting ourselves through university all at the same time. Yeah. That's what happened in a 12-month period.
Bloody rapid fire, absolutely. So, I mean, you did you started the immersive training then with the team from the Entourage, and obviously started to implement some of the tools from the Vision Traction Organizer or the VTO.
Back then, we weren't even doing any sort of team meetings. We weren't really all on the same page. We had kind of set some goals. We had kind of set some bigger targets, but we hadn't broken them down. So that's a big thing that we do now is break down those. Like, we spend time together planning out our year, and then we break it down into quarterlies, break it down into weeks. Like, this is all the stuff that's so important to growing.
I just thought of something actually, and this is again, it's almost like I need to apologise again. I remember, Dan, I was at one of our master plan communities coming up past the hospital there on the right hand side, and I was having a chat to you on the phone. You said, "Look, mate, so where do you see this business in like 5 or 10 years' time?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't really know, actually." And you're like, "Well, you better fucking find out, because there's now me and another couple of people that have now gotten out of a very successful career in the military, and you better have some plans under your belt. Like, there better be a vision. There better be some targets and some impact that we want to be able to make in sort of defence community." So you remember that? You're sitting there with a little smirk on your face, like you did.
It's
You
like,
like
not really, but it sounds like me.
That's
kicked
exactly
my ass
right,
into
Tammy.
gear.
I was like, that certainly sounds like something I would have said, yes.
Yeah. You're like, you better have a bit of a vision. So, and I sort of reached out to our crew at the Entourage, Pete Lakovich. I remember having a chat to you. I said, "Look, but I know that what I'll write now is going to change in a couple of years' time anyway, so it's not going to be accurate, so why would I bother?" And he's like, no, you're missing the point. Mm-hmm. Just get it out of your head and brainstorm and just come up with all the, be very divergent with your thinking. Have everything on the table and just let it mature in its own sort of way. So certainly, again, as the business owner, as the guy that was responsible to create that vision and lead the team, I was going through my own growing up, and it wasn't just you and I, Tam, with a business and then maybe a couple of mates come and join us. It was starting to evolve and starting to include other people, and we needed to give them that surety and that sense of purpose that we weren't just here having a crack on a bit of a side hustle. This is now our life.
And even though the VTO is a lot about planning, we also went into a lot more detail with our values. So we had never really had, Robbie and I had kind of had our own values that we'd kind of done for everyone, and we'd told everyone these are the values of the business. And it was kind of around then that we realised we have to get everyone else involved in this. We have to get everyone's input. So yeah, I remember. Do you remember? I printed out a big list of all these.
So you went to Apple, you went to Google, you went to Tesla, you went to Microsoft, like all these.
I think it was 200 companies' values or something like that, and I printed them all off, and then we kind of read them out. We got a short list of maybe 20, 25, and then I wrote them all up on the board, on a whiteboard, and everyone voted for it.
So who was there at the moment? So there was myself, Tamara, Dan, Simo was with us. Sharon was with us still
at
then.
that point in time, yep.
And who else was there? Jane started with us when we were doing that values
Renee.
thing? Oh, Renee was there. Okay, yeah, the wonderful Renee. Yeah, cool. Okay, yeah, so there was a good little group of people with everyone with their own ideas. It wasn't just the three of us just looking at the bloody whiteboard going, how can we make this work?
And it was really important, I think, to have those values outlined, because you can do whatever you want from an operations perspective on top of those values, but we as individuals, as an organisation, would need to remain true to those values that are the things that drive us on the background as well. So getting everyone's buy-in on those values, and it's probably one of the sentiments that we've brought forward from now. We still talk about our values every single week, and everyone recognises what value they live by. Having those values at the forefront of our mind has probably changed and driven the organisation in a way that most people haven't really been able to feel.
And look, to be fair, it's allowed us to also let a couple of people go that weren't the right fit. I'm sort of stepping ahead a little bit, but because, and I guess, ladies and gents, I'm demonstrating to you now the respect that we give to our values, is that if someone's not living our values 100% of the time, it's nothing personal. You're just not the right fit, and then you're not having a personal attack on someone when you're providing them feedback. Go, this is the value, these are the standards, this is what we've all agreed upon to be, the position that we want to be in. If you're not meeting those, and if you're not taking the feedback and then continuing to improve, we're not the right fit for you. Go fucking work somewhere else.
And that has always been the hardest part especially for me. I hate that side of the business, but I get it, because I also know that if it gets to that point, we've given them every bloody chance, like to align with our values, to bring themselves up to speed, to get on track with what we're doing. And if you're not a high performance player in our team, you kind of fall away. Like, you kind of deselect yourself. And when we're talking about those values, I have to say, everyone that comes into the business, one of the first things they say to me is, I've never experienced a company that lives and breathes their values like you do. Like, there's a few of the team that have worked for big companies before, and they've got the values written up on the board or on the walls in fancy writing on, canvases and whatever. But they learn about them in induction and they never hear about them again.
Yeah, there's a different thing between writing something on a piece of paper and then exemplifying it.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the key things that you've been really successful in doing, is making sure that the team that comes inside Axons Wire exemplifies every single one of those values as well.
Yeah.
So one of the little rituals we do, ladies and gents, to give you a little insight, is that every Friday, so every Monday we get together and go, look, this is what I've got on for the week. These are the roadblocks. This is, management team. This is what I might need your assistance with, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess we do that to make sure that the different departments of the business are not just working in those very dreaded stovepipes. Remember, like everyone, I remember when I went down to Special Ops headquarters in Canberra, there was just a massive open plan. Sure, there was some little skiffs off to the side where some other stuff went and got spoken about, but everyone was just in a massive open plan, and that was to combat the 4-cell not talking to the 7-cell, not talking to the 2-cell, not talking to the 1-cell, etc. So it was really good. So to get that underway, you're smirking.
I'm just giggling because if you're a civilian out there listening right now, you're like 4, 7, 5,
I have no
3.
idea what you're talking
Right.
about.
So, and Tammy had like this slightly glazed look over her face, so that's how I knew that the civilian sector did not know.
Busted.
What
Anyway, again, so all the different compartments. So we you sort of need to, the department head stands up at the start of each week and goes, look, this is what we got going on. So then there's awareness of what's happening. But at the back end of the week, sure, we cover off on those things, done, not done, in progress. But then each person also needs to stand up and go, this was the value that I felt like I embodied this week, and here's an example why. And oh, by the way, here's my shout out that I've got to another team member of, outside of my sort of direct reporting chain. So I guess, it's been it seems like it's received really, really well. So it's certainly like a little ritual.
Having someone give you a shout out that for some things that you don't even realise that you've potentially impacted someone with, like, that's such a good, and it makes you feel good. It's a really great way to end the week.
And it might seem a little bit wanky. And I remember when we sort of first started doing this, like, I've come from a fucking military background where we don't do any of this shit. You just fucking do what you get told. You do what you're told, and don't call your boss a prick because you'll go to jail. Don't come to work with a smoke hanging out of your joint with a joint hanging out of your mouth, because then you won't be working there very long. But in the real world where there's no rank and there's no threat of jail and or getting sacked, from that sort of perspective, you need to adopt different leadership styles. So I definitely want to have. In the future, we'll definitely have some other really awesome veteran leaders come and join us here in the studio, and talk about the real leadership where you don't have any rank on your shoulder or your chest.
Dan hasn't called you a prick that many times recently.
Not to his face.
Boom, boom.
You don't need to worry about what I talk about with Anne at home.
So yeah, there you go.
I love you, dear, if you're listening, by the way.
Let's keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's what I was going to say. When you think about your leadership style in the military, you very much need to be present and making sure you're on the spot while people are actually going through this. One of the things that you've had to realise now as business owners is you can't be there all the time. You can't be on the spot. And probably one of the earlier points in time that you recognised that was when you guys were heading away to Hawaii for like a week.
Just the two of us? Yep.
Just the two of you.
This was March 2019.
And you're like, okay, but it's all right, because when I go over to Hawaii, I'm still going to have phone connection. I'm going to be able to do all the stuff that I need to do.
And Robbie had not had a holiday since we started. That was like not even really a weekend off, not like working pretty much every night.
Working from the hospital bed, as we discussed in a previous.
And I remember your calendar. It was like, we literally put times in the calendar. It's like, these are meeting times while Robbie's in Hawaii that aligns with what we're doing back here in Australia. So we're still scheduling stuff to happen while you're away.
Like 10 p.m., 11 p.m.
Yes, I was on calls for the first couple of days. Then Tammy booked this awesome little turtle watching event. And then they just started serving Long Island iced teas on this boat at like 10 a.m. I'm like, this is fucking gold. So we're out there on a big buddy catamaran, maybe a kilometre off the beach, straight off of Waikiki there, just looking back over all the stuff there. And actually, you tell the story, Tam, because there was one event which dovetails exactly into, Dan, what you just mentioned then. And I want to just... There's all these little tiny little 1%ers that people have fucking no idea how there was a groundbreaking step that we took based on something, and it always turns out to be...
I think Tammy needs to tell the story because you were full of Long Island iced tea.
Yeah, it was great.
I watched him take some photos, some selfies, and then he puts his phone down on a towel right next to him. We're sitting at the front of this boat, and it's a beautiful boat. We're cruising back to Waikiki. We're going pretty fast. Deep, wide ocean, and then I watch him put his phone down on his towel, and within 20 seconds picks up said towel and shakes it shakes it out. His phone just goes flying across the front of the boat, and we basically watched it in slow motion slide and drop straight off the edge of the boat.
Your single point of communication with the remainder of your team, basically.
Yeah, so Tam and I just did like a little horizontal thing, and then boom, just dropped off the cliff. Phone gone.
Yeah.
Whilst underway, gone forever.
That's not coming back.
No.
Oh no, it was fast boat heading back to Waikiki, was not going back.
Literally the very first thought, I'm like, oh, how the fuck am I going to do my meetings back with the team? Anyway, so Tam had a phone. So then I think she rang you on the phone and going, I'll put a little message in the Skype chat. Robbie's lost his phone, everybody, so he will no longer be on any calls whilst we're away. And I thought straight away, I'm like, we're supposed to talk to this client about this and present this property here and this and that. Like, Carl up in Townsville that we spoke about yesterday. I'm like, how the fuck am I going to be able to do that? Like, I'm going to be able to let the clients down. I'm going to have to postpone everything. And then I think, Tam, you sort of tapped me on the shoulder. You went, the boys are back there. They've got it covered. You've trained them. They know what to do. Maybe you don't need to be there. And I wasn't freaking out, for the record. I was like, but it did feel a little bit uncomfortable. I'm like, but no one's ever presented it. Like, this will be the first time someone's shown a property to a client and I haven't been there. And I just felt a bit uncomfortable. And then, I just fucking kept drinking for the afternoon and forgot about it. Woke up the next morning and boom, there's an expression of interest notification email in my stuff. I'm like, and the boys are like, they're like, hey, guess what, man? We spoke to Carl. He didn't care that you weren't there, and we had a great conversation. And boom, he's going to go and buy a property. And it was like literally a fucking mic drop moment. I'm like, I just had a realization that I don't actually need to be there on every really important call for a client. And the guys and girls that I've trained up in the business to do their shit, they can do it whilst I'm not there.
And I remember sort of speaking to you guys about this probably a few months afterwards, and you'd been so proud, from my recollection, that you actually went back to the remainder of the people you're over there doing your business planning with, and you're like, our business is running by itself. It was like good. It was a big light bulb moment for you where you were super proud to go back and speak to all those other entrepreneurs. And what was their reaction when they heard that your business is operating by itself back home?
That is ultimately the dream for all business owners, is that they can get off the day-to-day tools, that technician level, and really rise up and become the leader that you need to be. Because while you're spending time in the business, you're not really spending time on the business, like creating the strategy, creating all the high-level goals, the future planning, all of that kind of stuff that you need to do as a leader. Yeah. But you're not doing that if you're sitting there doing really basic admin tasks.
Yeah. So then they ask you, like, how did that happen? I'm like, I lost my phone. I got forced into it. And you know what? They performed the job admirably, and they were jealous. They were very interested in the story, but they were like, how did you get to that point? I'm like, it just fucking happened. And now it's like, it's like the pearl gates just opened up and went, oh.
Yeah. So one of the other things that obviously you need to do as leaders as well is to get a break. And now, miraculously, because you threw your phone in the water and Tammy just said, let the boys do their job, you now had a few days holiday remaining in Hawaii where you got to sit down and focus and actually rest and refresh.
And it was then that Robbie said, I think we should bring the team here.
Yeah, that's right. So we're having such a beautiful time over there.
Obviously too many Long Islands.
So
Long Island or Mai Tais. I don't know what he was on at that point in time.
But here's the thing, like it's another event which then caused us to then think a different way. We're like, we're having such a good time over here getting away, and like, relaxing and exploring and thinking about other things where we're not just in the grind. We're not, we're able to get a bit of traction on what the sort of the next future event might be. So yeah, we decided let's go back and break that news.
So the rest of your trip ended up being a bit of a reconnaissance mission where you started to check out every single bar in Waikiki and every single restaurant that you needed to be able to go back and visit, obviously. And then you came back to Australia. And we all know that Robbie is absolutely horrendous at keeping secrets.
God.
So how did you keep this a secret from the rest of the team?
Oh, he didn't really. He's like, I've got news. I've got news.
Hang on. So we about a week later.
So you managed 1 week.
We had 1 week.
Yeah.
1 week. And I was so excited. Like, we were like, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to bring him over here and we're going to do all this planning and et cetera, et cetera.
So I had planned, because I bought everyone these little dancing Hawaii girls to sit on their desks and they like dance around.
Little hula girls.
Little hula girls. And I was going to make it a big like thing and like really, I don't know, put it all out there, plan it, do a nice invite for everyone. And we were having a few drinks at the Women in Property luncheon, charity luncheon, which was sponsored by Verve.
Yeah. So that was
and Belvedere.
Yeah, so that was for International Women's Day, that one.
That was.
Yeah.
And
So here we are. It was like it was in the, I don't know, big Flash Hotel in Brisbane. There's a Flash one, eh? And there's 600 people there and maybe 50 blokes. So for the first time in my life, I felt like it.
Do not say it.
But I was like, fuck it. We've got everyone here. The drinks are flowing. I was like, Tammy, let's stand up and let's announce it right now. So
yeah, he lasted a week. And I had nothing
like a month.
prepared. But anyway, we did tell the team and there was lots
tears.
of squeals.
Yep, squeals and tears.
And I remember at that point in time, one of the real concerns was Jane was pregnant with a bub at that point in time. So everyone was like, how's Jane going to be able to come?
Jane straight away rang her mum and her mum said, you are going, whether I'm going with you and to mind the baby. But because the baby was going to be born, a couple of months before?
It was a few months beforehand,
maybe 3 months before?
Max. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not very good with time.
Yeah. No.
That was our biggest concern at the time was like, are you going to be able to make it? We were going in December, so...
Because she's part of the Axon family. Like, the whole family needs to be there for this to be such a memorable event. And no one could even think about the idea of Jane not being able to come along with us on this adventure. So it was super exciting from that perspective as well.
Yeah. I remember when she did go on mat leave. I'm sure there's a few people that remember this, but I got a life-size cutout. We'll have to get the marketing team to import a photo here. But yeah, we got a life-size cutout of Jane. Her photo was propped behind her desk there.
And so she wasn't going to be missing from the team.
Oh, it was hilarious. Do you remember
I certainly do.
Everyone was hiding that life-size pop-out what do you call it? Life-size cutout?
Yeah.
Cardboard cutout, yeah.
In the most random places in the office.
Often inappropriate places as well for a young lady to be hanging out.
Oh, my God. The men's toilet was a frequent area for the Jane cutout. And there was a few squeals from a few of the boys.
Oh, shit. It was like you walk in the door and you see a young... Excuse me, you're not meant to be in here, ma'am.
But it was so lifelike and the image was like so crystal clear and it was literally the right height.
It was
and everything.
hilarious. We often have a few, I don't know, funny things in the office like that, just banter.
Yeah, because at this point in time, remember, we're still operating out of a residential property. So it wasn't, ladies and gents, it wasn't a full life-size cutout of Jane in like a publicly accessible male toilet for you.
No,
for that.
It was just a house. It was a house.
Which was rapidly on the way out, I suppose. That's kind of the next key event. We'd outgrown this residential property and I know that you guys have been looking around for quite a while to actually go ahead and find us where does Axon...
it took months for us to find a new property. It took, we would go and there would be the shittiest places, we had been so lucky to be in that beautiful house for so long and then... Yeah, we started looking at commercial spaces and there was factories and
it was. So we're trying to, Dan with yourself and then Jane who's got to, transit the best part of an hour at minimum to sort of come to the office. We were trying to accommodate by being somewhere on the northern part of the Gold Coast to sort of alleviate some of that travel time. And a really good mate of mine, Brett Campbell, actually, I said, look, we're looking around Oxenford and Coomera and all these regions. He's like, Helensvale. I was like, why the fuck are you looking for an office up there? I'm like, well, we got people in Brisbane and they're driving down. He goes, mate, I don't give a fuck about how far people want to drive. If people want to work with your business, they're going to fucking drive an extra 10 minutes, start looking somewhere back down around the Gold Coast a little bit more. So I guess he forced us to broaden our zone of observation.
We found our little Southport place.
Hey presto, yeah. So we're now situated on level 8, right across the road from the Aquatic Centre on Marine Parade there in Southport.
Looking out to the Broadwater.
Yeah, looking out across to Marina Mirage. So there's jet boats, there's helicopters, there's jet skis, there's bloody... Yeah, swimmers and all that stuff across the way there. So it's really, really good.
Yeah, and Tammy had to let her internal designer come out from that perspective as well.
Because it was just a shell, wasn't it?
Yeah, a shell with some very big pillars that I had to work with. But we literally had no floor, no walls, no offices, no kitchenette. So it had to be fully decked out. But it's beautiful now. We love it.
Yeah, I remember the first time I came into the office, we opened the doors and I think, Robbie, you were there like maybe one step behind me. And I like looked out to the slight right and I saw the marina over at Southport and I was just like, I don't care what you say. That's my office.
I was like, okay.
You got your payback when it was moving time with that, because remember back a couple of episodes we discussed that I'd promised you that the office would be all set up for when you started, and then due to a few things with Robbie, then that was not the case, and you essentially had to help me set up the office from scratch. So you kind of got your payback when we moved into this office.
Well, there's another really, really important event going on.
Yeah, well, I pretty much planned all that other event around when you guys were moving. No, not really.
You're getting married, that's what it was.
Yeah, so, one of the happiest days of my life, obviously, joining Anne there. So we had a great little ceremony. It just so happened that I still was on my honeymoon when you guys were moving into the new office.
So it was August, September 2019, yeah?
Around about that. So the back end of August, so 31st of August for our wedding. And then I think it was like the 1st or the 2nd of September that you guys ended up moving into that office.
And we're like flat pack boxes arriving from IKEA left, right and centre, and everyone was like, we did no client-facing work for like 3 days minimum. We were literally just setting up the whole office. Yeah. You're away on your honeymoon. You walked in and I'm like, look at all that. There's my desk.
Oh, excellent. There's my desk.
Plug in, bang. I'm ready. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, I was like, I'm glad that you managed to get the desk in exactly the right spot that I would like it. Thank you very much.
That was good, mate. You deserve it too. I'm glad that happened.
And it's a beautiful spot. We were looking recently because we're having to get some more space, and Robbie said, we're not leaving.
Yeah, we're not leaving that place for many, many, many years.
Removals suck. Everyone who's been in the military knows that removals suck.
I just don't want to let that view go. No. Everyone who walked in there, they're like, holy fuck, have a look at this job.
We had to change the direction of where clients sit, because they sit there and they look out the window instead of focusing on the coaching session. And they're like, wait, over here.
So it's September, October 2019. We're all pretty much fully moved in now. And we're shooting our Facebook Lives from up there. We've got a little makeshift studio sorted out. So doing all our content stuff. So yeah, if you want to sort of scroll back through our social media pages and go to late 2019, you'll see a shit ton of images and videos of us establishing the new property, etc. But there was one last thing that needed to happen in 2019, which sort of rounded it all off about how we really kicked off those training wheels. Dan, do you want to sort of get us going on that, please?
Yeah, I suppose we've already alluded to it. We had to go to Hawaii. The whole team had to down tools and take ourselves over to Hawaii. And it wasn't just a party, for those of you who are thinking this is a bit of a booze trip for the team.
I had people doing something every day and night. There was planned activities for everyone to keep everyone on track.
Yeah, it was a combination of personal development. There was some education. There was some planning. There was some team building activities. Yeah,
and up front, I think the major thing that we did as soon as we got there to set the tempo was we sat down and we did a full day of planning.
That was the second day, because the first day I got everyone out onto that turtle watching tour that Robbie had lost his phone on.
0 dark 100.
Yeah, so when you're arriving on a flight at 5 a.m, I was like, right, to avoid the jet lag that's going to come on, so I'm going to get everyone out into the sunshine, out into some fresh air, There was a few hangovers from the flight over.
I was going to say a couple of hours in the Qantas Club in Sydney beforehand.
What happens on tour stays on tour. Let's not go into
well,
any
we
more
hadn't
detail
even
about that.
arrived at that point.
That's exactly right. So we ended up and we went ahead and we had the initial, I suppose, full day of planning with the entire team there. So for me, like, I think that planning session is when everyone started to really think a bit more deeply about where the organisation was going. We really started to get more than 3 or 4 minds thinking on the future, but the whole team thinking about where Axon was going.
It just created a bit more buy-in as well with the team. Like, they really started to feel connected because they had that bigger purpose with the connection. They had their own responsibilities. Their own goals were broken up. We had like gone into each layer of the business, each department, broken down that into their own goals, where they'd been, what they're wanting to achieve, how well we've done before, what we're going to do, break it right down.
We were listening to a lot of client feedback as well, just to say, okay, you know, here's some improves. And when we went to this part of the process, if you had done this better, it would have made it easier. We're like, okay, let's fucking
I
do
have
that
to
then.
say that is something that we have continued to do really well, is whenever there is some client feedback or some sort of improvement, then how fast do we implement that?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. We're not like knee jerking left, right, and centre and sort of zigzagging along the way. We're not jumping at shadows. But certainly, if there is any sort of a trend going along, or if someone does provide us a no brainer quick fix, then bang, it's implemented. I guess one of the things I love about we've got a very quick learning loop, and we can implement shit straight away. We don't need to get approval. We don't need to write to the fucking CDF. We don't need to do a fucking CO's brief. Someone's like, well, maybe we should do that. I'm like, yep, that's a good idea. Make it so. So it certainly happens a bit quicker.
That is kind of another, and I'll go into this in future episodes, but one of the really key things that I love about hiring veterans is their implementation and their ability to adapt to things like that. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, love it.
One of the things that really stood out to me in that planning session was I think it was the first time that we wrote down our goals of how many people we were going to help, that I actually created a number that was higher than Robbie and Tamara.
Yes.
And you guys sat there and you're like, how does that work? And I was like, well, we need to do this, to do this, to do this. And I basically ratcheted out the numbers. And like, we did meet the goals, but to be able to do that, there was a few micro steps that needed to happen in between, because we needed to be able to do things at a far larger scale from that perspective.
Yeah, we were. Well, I guess, your Masters in Project Management certainly helped in that sense, because, sort of think about 2018, really for the first trading year of the business, we helped about 30 clients. 2019, which is we're at the end of 2019 when we were doing this sort of session here, we'd hoped from a success package perspective, we helped about 80 clients, sort of 67 expressions of interest. And then we started talking about 130, 140. And I'm like, we've all just worked our ass off during 2019 to get to 70, 80. And you want to fucking go to 130, 140. I'm like, there's no way we're going to be able to do that. But you know what? It was, let's aim for the stars, and even if we hit the lamppost on the way past, we're still off the ground.
I don't think that's quite the quote.
It is. It's my fucking quote. I just made it up.
Well, and I mean, given those lofty aspirations we were sort of shooting for, it was kind of fortuitous then that Jetstar decided to have some strikes, and we got stuck in Hawaii for another 2 days. It was terrible.
You just had to stay in Hawaii
right in the heart of Waikiki, yes.
For an extra 48 hours or something until we could get another flight home.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that was unfortunate.
Yeah. And then we got home though, and things started happening in earnest to be able to develop us to be able to put steps in place so that the next year was going to be tremendous.
Well, we had a lot of growth to come. That was the kind of the key point that we had identified. Okay, we need more team members here.
Yeah, because I want to when we started talking about numbers, I want to fast forward, because here we are now in the early parts of 2021, and in 2020 we ended up helping 142 clients. So I was shitting myself about 130, coming from 60, 70, and we ended up helping 142. So it was a massive year. But there's only one way that happened, exactly as you just said then, Tam. We needed to recruit some more people. So I guess we sort of wrap up this episode, because even though, what are we now, 5 episodes in, and it's been the Robbie, Dan and Tammy show so far, you're about to be joined by the one and only Mr. Dane Roche, who's our next property coach, is going to come and join us.
Absolutely.
And just looping back, I guess some of the lessons learnt from this one is all about planning. Like, we would not be where we are if it wasn't for planning. So if there's any business owners that are starting out, first of all, read those books, Gino Wickman. But yeah, you need to plan. You need to have goals, set those goals, and yeah.
But as kind of a team member as well, it's not just about the planning, but having the faith and the belief in the vision that's being portrayed by the leadership team there as well. And as you brought up, RT, I was like, so where does this thing actually go? Because if you're like, I don't know, I'm just making it up as I go along. If you
There's no buy-in then.
If you pass that message on to your team, they're like, so what about in 3 or 4 years' time from now? Where am I going to be?
Do I have a job in 3 or 4 years' time?
That's exactly right. So the power to plan, and I mean, military people or people that used to be in the military are exceptional planners, and the ability to transition that across into the civilian sector as well is a super powerful tool.
Yeah, we've come a bloody long way. In that year, 2019, we really, really did sort of go through those levels of growing up. We well and truly shook off the training wheels. But I guess as we sort of transition now into the next episode, the next challenge came in now growing the business and having some more people come in. And it certainly included people that we didn't know before, because I guess part of the reason that we'd had some success is that we had recruited extremely well. We'd recruited from inside the wire. We recruited known entities. When we stepped outside of that realm, it wasn't fucking easy. And then having the right people come in and perform those roles didn't always turn out well, but you're about to be introduced to an absolute superstar. Ain't going anywhere. Dane, see you on the next episode. Thanks,
Cheers.
Tammy. Thanks, Dan.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning into today's podcast. If you enjoyed listening, make sure you give us a 5-star rating, hit subscribe, so you'll be first in line to get it in your inbox every week on a Tuesday. Whilst you're at it, open up your favourite social media app, be that Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube, and connect with Axon Property Group. This is where you'll see us every day sharing the secrets of creating multi-million-dollar property portfolios and performing to the highest levels of your life. You'll get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to what it really takes to build a life that you love. You'll also discover how to secure your financial future as an ADF member or veteran, and I assure you your future self will love you for it. Thanks again for listening, and